Hello,
Hey.
everyone. My name's Seb. I'm one of the SAP recruiters here at Precision,
And my name's Abby Van Royen, also one of the SAP recruiters here at Precision Sourcing.
and we're going to take you through our quarterly market report.
Maybe as we go along as well, if you want to add some questions to the chat function, we will read them out. If there's some pretty big, heavy hitting questions, though, maybe we'll just wait to the end to do those.
All right, brilliant. Well, we'll get straight into it then and get stuck in. Just going to move this down here. Awesome. So, welcome to the Q2 FY26 SAP market report. Now, I'll probably give you a little bit of background. We always do a market report every quarter to basically talk about what's been happening in the market, what we've been seeing in terms of kind of statistics, trends, and obviously make sure that you guys are really well equipped with how to kind of navigate those challenges and changes throughout the year.
Just, just a little bit of an agenda of what we're going to be going through today. Market confidence and some hiring trends. 2025 was a bit of a roller coaster of a year, so it'll be interesting to see where we're going to go with this year. Some information in regards to current projects, SAP projects in motion and how they're set up, greenfield, brownfield, etc. Skills, roles and rates, any advice for candidates and also hiring managers as well. And then just a bit of an outlook for 2026, which is looking good. It's Q2. So let's do a bit of a market overview. As I said, last year was most definitely a roller coaster of a ride for candidates, clients, recruiters, anybody in the SAP space, really, anybody in the IT space, really. However, we have found, particularly over the last few months, that confidence has massively returned after a risk-averse period. Like if I look at my year, for example, last year, the first part of my year, I was questioning whether I was even very good at my job after having done it for 16 years. But the tail end of last year, things absolutely turned around. Achieved High Performers Club, various different things. So it shows that if I'm doing well, the market is doing well as well. There's been a massive increase in activity across all levels of a project. So be that discovery, high-level design, budgets have been signed off, confidence is returning. And I know that there's quite a lot going on externally in the world. Would there be a World War III soon? Who knows? But
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not. No, there's not going to be. But yeah, we're finally seeing things are starting to improve. And we saw a massive end-of-year rush to secure talent towards the tail end of last year.
Now, one of the biggest things that we always talk about, especially when we're looking at what does signify, like market confidence, we look at the split between contract and permanent hiring. So for Q2 FY26, we were around 12% perm, 88% contract. And now what we're seeing is that as soon as you start seeing that perm numbers start going up, it means that people are no longer thinking about short term, they're starting thinking about long term. So companies are looking at, okay, well, what can we do in terms of bringing on the internal people to ensure that we are where we need to be? But there's still a little bit of caution, right? I think last year, as Abby was saying, there was a lot of, when things going to start, is it going to happen now? People were waiting for this sort of big wave that never really came. And it sort of comes in sort of drips and drabs. And now we're seeing at the end of the year, a shift to 55% perm, which means that there's a strong lead into 2026 because customers are kind of building up on that momentum. Now, when we're looking at some of the SAP projects in action, there's obviously been some contention around what projects are happening. Are there S4? Are they brownfield? Are they RISE? There's been a lot of obviously variances between different organizations. Of course, there's always going to be specific things that come into play, right? Cost pressures, how risk averse a company is going to be, and then also resistance to change, still impacting a lot of the delivery models. I think as well as we started seeing a change in SAP's sort of marketing strategy, and now a lot of more customers moving to RISE, we've seen that sort of kind of come into now 2026 with customers really kind of going, okay, well, this is the year we're actually going to start making things move. And as Abby mentioned, this is where we're actually going to have our budgets approved to make that happen.
So we did a little sort of internal project and we sat down together as a team. There's 7 of us in the SAP team now at Precision. So we sat down together and we put together a little Excel spreadsheet in regards to the projects that we know are happening in the market. And we looked at whether they were brownfield, greenfield, bluefield, or no one size fits all approach emerging. And you can see on the screen now, so brownfield seems to be leading the way in the market at 53.3%. Greenfield, 40%, which is actually quite interesting, isn't it? It's good to see some new people coming in. Bluefield, 6.7%, and then no one size fits all. That's definitely emerging and sort of coming into the market, which is new. So, skills and roles in demand. This is always a hot topic. Everybody's always asking us what roles are in demand at the moment. So, we've seen a massive uptake in functional consultants, and that obviously comes in with the sort of the excitement of projects actually now finally starting to kick off. So, finance is always a beast, always see an upturn in finance projects. HCM, success factors. Personally, I call HCM and success factors the Toyota of SAP. And what I mean by that is it's always loyal. There's always roles coming up and it's always consistent. I don't own a Toyota though. Maybe I need to get one. And then SCM. We're also seeing a big uptake in solution architects and program and project managers. And when you see an uptake in program and project manager roles, it's exciting because that means that programs and projects are actually starting to be kicked off now.
Now, when we look at, especially for a lot of these projects, right, there's always going to be sort of a change in rates and market movement. We've started seeing now the pay rates have increased by 0.74% quarter on quarter. So every quarter we have a look at, okay, well, what are the pay rates looking like? How much are clients paying? What are candidates asking for? And we always want to make sure that we're getting a full understanding. Now, it changes from different technologies. So you can see there, from data, for example, it's been down 0.32%. SAP has gone up 0.74%, which is obviously very small. And technology in general is 0.64. That growth is driven by early demand signals rather than scarcity in the market. I think previously we had a very sort of candidate-driven market. And now clients are kind of coming back into the sort of driving seat and going, okay, well, this is when we want to go and get these things ahead. And I think that we're seeing sort of a trend around a little bit of upward pressure on rates, but still not a crazy increase as to what you would potentially expect once, there's a big move on there as well. Now, when we look at vacancies, we always look at different kind of topics. So one of them is how hard to fill are they? How easy to fill are they? And some of the kind of vacancies we found to be very particularly challenging due to scarcity, but also around the types of projects and competition has been SAP architects. Now that covers solution architects, that covers enterprise architects as well, as customers are really kind of make sure that all of their architecture is in place for either they're doing ECC to S4 conversions or they're doing S4 brownfield migrations. We want to make sure that they have the right people there. Conversely, we've seen a lot as well in that sort of manufacturing space, not heavy manufacturing because that typically doesn't exist in Australia, but EWM and TM has kind of had a resurgence as well. Program and test management roles also, as a result of those bigger programs, are starting to come back into the fold. And of course, senior functional specialists, as Abby's mentioned, is going to continue to be across a variety of different modules. I think we always get the question of, where are we seeing the most surge in specific modular areas? And it's always very hard to predict because it changes with the times. Like it could be one thing one quarter, another thing the next quarter. The main thing is that customers are trying to make sure that they fill the key roles, and whether that be, functional FICO consultants, sometimes it can be SDMM, although that's typically quite, I wouldn't say that hard to find in the market because there's a lot of people that either are kind of in that consultancy space that do that, or in general, that's always been a bigger sort of mass area.
So we've got some tips for you here, guys, as well, particularly if you're a candidate in the market at the moment. Stay flexible on rates. I know we've mentioned that there has been a slight increase in rates. However, if you're coming in and in your mind you've got that you want $1,500 a day and you're a functional consultant and you're coming up against 3 other people and these other people are only on $1,200 or $1,300 a day, if there's rigidity in your mindset, that can often be a bit of a challenge. So stay flexible, right? Think about what your baseline is and say, this is exactly what I'm looking for, but there is some flexibility around it. As recruiters, we'll always want to try and get you the best rate that fits within the budget that our client is given to us as well. So just always be upfront and have an open conversation. We are seeing as well that a lot of people are requiring people to be back on site now. So hybrid models, unfortunately, gone are the days of, completely remote roles. I've just spent 4 years working remotely in Queensland and I've now moved back to New South Wales, and it's a 2-hour commute for me to get into the city. But, hybrid models are definitely on the rise. And then the role scope as well. Role might not be a one size fits all. It might not be your exact dream role, but if there's flexibility around all these areas, you never know, you might end up in your dream role after all. This is something we always go on about. So prioritize relationship building and try and push for face-to-face interviews if you can. You just build so much more rapport face-to-face, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And it's good. I had a candidate say to me this morning, actually, I'm in Queensland. I would really like to go and see them face to face. And I was like, this is music to my ears because that will really make you stand out from the other person who's just sitting behind a screen, just like we are right now. And be patient, which I know is probably not what you want to hear if you're desperate in the market at the moment, but hiring volumes will spike as projects move to building. We can see coming up in the market, there's a lot of projects coming up. Now, tips for you hiring managers as well. So kind of similar to what we were just saying to candidates. Do not wait for unicorn candidates. A 70 to 80% fit is pretty strong, right? I've been doing this job for 17 years now, and I've always seen the people that get the roles are people that can build that relationship with the hiring manager and have that business-facing skills alongside technical. So just keep an eye out and see how your gut feel goes. Move quickly. I'm working with a client of mine at the moment, and they are just doing one-and-done interviews. They're getting everybody in that interview stage. These are for contract roles, granted, but they're doing one and done, getting it done, and they are beating the competition. Another client of mine was doing 4 to 5 interview stages just for a contractor, and it just doesn't bode well for either sides. And a big thing that we always come across is final approvals before going to market. So if you know for a fact that you're going out and you're going to hire, but you've still got to go through 7 or 8 approval lines before you can do that hiring, yes, we can kick that hiring off for you. However, we will also be driven by you to say whether you've got it approved or not.
I think to add on to that as well, one of the biggest things that we've seen is comparison is the thief of joy. We've seen so many customers have an interview with someone, really like them, and then decide they want another comparison option that may potentially not exist on the market as well.
Yeah.
So if you like someone and you've had a good conversation with them, hire them, because the chances are that maybe if you wait another 1 or 2 weeks, then you've lost them and you're back to square one as well.
We get into that stage of the market again.
Now, in terms of the outlook for the rest of this year, I think from what we've been seeing as a team, there's going to be a lot of S4 and SuccessFactors programs that have just been approved. So you're probably seeing it as well in the market from a consultancy perspective. Consultancies are now starting to ramp up. So consulting customers are building up their internal teams, there's staff augmentation happening. And in general, there's a lot of noise around projects that are going to be happening. So with discovery phases moving rapidly into build, there's a lot of that happening as well. There's a shift from a sort of client-driven to candidate-driven market, as I was expecting and talking about earlier. And I think there's a lot of people also that are still like, oh, well, is this the wave that we've been waiting for? Is this going to happen? Is this going to be like a big bang? And the truth of it is, it could be. It also might not be. I think it really depends on how quick customers move. There's a lot of talk around things moving quickly and, getting approvals and things like that, which is great. But obviously the proof is in the pudding. It just depends on how quickly those things are actually going to come to market. I've had some customers say, we're going to be hiring in January, then it gets pushed out to February, and then in the end, they actually start hiring in March. So be aware that also is going to be sort of dynamic and a very dynamic environment. So that will change as it goes along. And then you'll kind of see that as you move along anyways. Now, in terms of key takeaways, I think what we're seeing now is there's a lot of confidence coming back, especially with that resurgence to perm, people making sure that there's long-term decisions rather than short-term, but everything is still going to be cautious in that sense. We're going to see a big demand increase sharply throughout 2026, which means there's going to be a lot of competition from clients to get the right resources on board, specifically in those areas we mentioned before. And I think that flexibility piece is really going to be a big piece moving forward to ensure you kind of get the right people on board. You need to make sure that you're kind of being competitive with your other customers that you'll be dealing with. But in terms of that sort of defining what a successful hiring will look like, that flexibility and speed will be a big one for sure.
So just want to make you all aware as well, for people that don't know, on our website, we have got a very handy go-to tool, which is called the S4 HANA Do's and Don'ts Resource Hub. So I'm sure a lot of you know, given that you're on this webinar anyway, but Precision Sourcing and our SAP team here host podcasts with several experts across the SAP space. So what we've done is we've taken snippets of these podcasts, put them all together, and it's a practical guide across everything really. Business case, governance, data, change, anything you can think of in a program, we've pretty much covered across this resource hub. So we will share the link with this after the webinar as well, but head on over there. There's some really great stuff.
And you can also go on Spotify and type in Configure It Done. That's what the podcast is called. And there's a whole load of different other podcasts with other hosts, other areas as well. If you're technology agnostic and you want to look at other areas also, there's also that in there. And that'll be a really good resource for any customers looking at, different transition models or what they're specifically planning to do in terms of SAP.
Yeah, from the horse's mouth.
Exactly. Cool. So now we're going to start breaking out into questions. I just saw someone raise their hand just then. So thanks for being patient, guys. I know it's difficult sometimes to sit through a webinar and listen to people talk, but hopefully that's given you sort of a good understanding of what's been happening in the market so far. And then, we'll start taking questions just to get a little bit more of context for people that want a little bit more information.
Put it on the big screen for people.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, we must have missed that because we had the screen on.
Yeah, so maybe go through the chat ones because these guys.
Okay. Yeah, perfect. So we'll go to Javid's question. So do we have any info around how many organizations in Australia, private and public, are implementing S4? We do, but a lot of the time as well, they're probably the best way to put it is it's quite sensitive information as well. So customers aren't willing to kind of put that information out to the public just yet. We can give you an idea of, which customers are moving to different areas, but a lot of the time as well, there's also NDAs and things like that that prevent them from kind of putting it. If it's out publicly, then that's typically when we can talk about it. But I would say that's going to be sort of on a case-to-case basis.
There's a lot more this year than there were last year, though. Put it that way. And then Radan's question. So given the earlier comment about resistance to change, what is the demand for change management overall year on year? Change management is a bit of an interesting one. It's one of the first things to go when the market quietens down because people sometimes don't put enough emphasis on how important change management is. But we've often seen big projects go through massive changes and then have nobody to implement the change management. So projects are either not used, people are not trained on it properly, there's no communications around it. So I've actually got a few roles on in the change management space right now. I haven't worked on a change management role for about 18 months. So I feel like it's finally starting to kick off. People are seeing that, right, we need to hire people in this change space. So yeah, again, confident in this space.
Thank you.
Sanjay, you read, what is the lower and higher end of day rates if you're a senior consultant? Again, it's going to be very subjective in terms of which kind of modular area you work in. If you work in remote, which location you're based, everything is very, very subjective and very kind of factor dependent. Because, for example, if you're in Brisbane, you're going to have a different day rate, for example, than someone maybe in Melbourne for two reasons. Obviously, different places have different charges when it comes to insurances. There's different pieces as well regarding how customers and how organizations work with the government. So it's quite difficult to give you a lower and higher end of day rates. We do have a salary guide and a rates guide that we can send through. So if you want a little bit more information, then we can definitely send that through. But it is going to be very dependent on your role and what you're doing as well in terms of responsibilities.
Do we have a list of interview FAQs for a program test manager role? Yes, we've got general interview questions. Javid, if you want to reach out to me after this, particularly if you're Sydney based, because I have a program test manager role on at the moment. So that would work out quite well. But reach out to me directly after this and I'll send you through what we've got.
Ben mentioned, what are the common must-have qualifications, skills that are required for program managers and senior project managers and their experience? I think the biggest thing is you need to be able to manage a team effectively, but you also need to be able to manage up and manage down. And I think there's a lot of customers at the moment where one of the biggest things is, that obviously you can manage large budgets, you can have experience with S4, and that's obviously going to help you significantly, especially if you have that ECC to S4 conversion experience. But you really need to be able to tell a story and to actually be able to communicate with the customer, the SI, and the stakeholders. That excellent communication is probably one of the biggest things that sets aside good project managers from not so good project managers. I'll give you a great example. A lot of the roles that we get, one of the biggest sort of criteria is they've got to be able to actually hold a workshop, and they've got to be able to actually speak to stakeholders from C-level suite and all the way and above. And I think in terms of like certifications and things like that, if you have Activate, that's always going to be a big plus because a lot of projects now are running on Activate and that SAP methodology. So that's obviously going to be a big piece as well. But I think especially as a program manager or a senior project manager, you really need to play to your strengths and make sure that you're applying for the right roles as well. I've seen countless of project managers that applied for roles maybe that either have been below them or a little bit above. And you sort of need to make sure that you're applying for the correct roles to ensure that you get those right opportunities as well. I think from an SAP perspective, you need to be able to obviously effectively manage people, have a good understanding of the actual technology, but you don't need to be an expert. You're not going to be a functional consultant, for example, right? You're still going to be managing people, but that understanding of how you deliver that sort of communication is pretty much paramount.
Can I just add to that as well, please? That a lot of the roles that I get in the project management space, the client will come to me and say, I need a finance project manager who has worked on an end-to-end S/4HANA implementation before. So my recommendation is always to go quite specialist if you can, whether that be a supply chain project manager or a retail project manager or a success factors project manager. I don't often see roles for quite generalist roles. Program management, slightly different, but yeah, if you can get as specialist and sort of inch wide, mile deep as you can, that tends to put you leaps and bounds ahead. For example, I'll speak to, I'm looking for a finance project manager, let's just say that, and I have a lot of supply chain people reach out to me who've got a supply chain background, and it's just not relevant at all.
Have you seen much sort of update around BTP and its cloud integration suite?
Yeah, massively. Last year was a big year for that. I think people are still trying to figure out how to spell it, but we're getting there. But yeah, it's most definitely sort of increasing. I think people are still just trying to adapt to it and still bring it in as a business. But what's your thoughts?
No, yeah, I would agree. I think the integrations, people now are starting to use BTP more and more and actually figuring out what it can do to their businesses and how they can actually kind of facilitate integration. I think one of the biggest challenges before is that people were sort of implementing it without really understanding how they could leverage it within their organizations. Now there's getting a little bit more maturity. There's a little bit more understanding from an SAP standpoint, and customers are actually utilizing it properly. We've also seen a big resurgence in DataSphere projects and obviously SAC for from all of the reporting aspects as well. So in general, yeah, we've been seeing a big resurgence of that.
And I saw a lot of smaller consultancies starting in the BTP space last year, which is always a good sign of confidence coming into the market, right? These were people who were working for the big consultancies, doing the big projects, and then decided that they could do a better job themselves. So you wouldn't, they did a lot of research, and you wouldn't be starting a business and putting your family on the line if there wasn't projects to be coming in. And I've seen the people that have done this, I've seen them thrive. So yeah, there's definitely projects happening.
Now, Sabia, you mentioned I have 5 years experience in SCM domain. Does pursuing an MS in supply chain, I'm assuming MS is masters, in supply chain management give me an advantage in the job market, or would it be disadvantageous decision at this point for bringing a career gap as part of studies? Great, good question. I think from our side anyways, we don't look at that.
No.
We don't look at whether you have a master's in supply chain, or customers typically don't really look at whether you have a master's in supply chain. I think back in the day, you used to see job ads and it would be like, masters in supply chain or MS in something equivalent. And I think that's changed a lot now. It's really about your lived experience. If you've got experience in that SAP supply chain domain and you've got experience with customers and doing end-to-end projects, that's going to be a lot more advantageous than having a master's in supply chain. Some customers may ask for it if they still have a sort of old school way of thinking. But in general, we never have that as a requirement when we're having, job qualification calls with clients, where they're like, oh yeah, but they don't have a master's in supply chain. That really hasn't happened. It just also depends on what you want to do as well. If you want to do it and you want to do a master's, then, for sure, go ahead. If you think it's going to be a good thing and you want to have that experience, it's obviously not going to hurt. But in terms of an employability aspect,
it won't. I've 17 years I've been doing this, and I've never once read a job description or had a role on that requires a master's in a role, particularly not in something it's considered, I suppose, a bit more generalist, supply chain. It was, yeah. It's a lot of money and it's time out of your career. So yeah, I wouldn't personally recommend it. It's not required.
Jeevan, if you message us regarding that separately, that would be great. And then we can have a chat. Vinny as well, if you could also message us separately for anything that's job related, or if you're looking to get an understanding of what we have on, please message us afterwards and we'll have a chat with you.
Change roles. I have change roles on at the moment, so please reach out to me. I've actually got 2 change roles on right now. Sanjay Gupta, just in regards to what model of SAP SuccessFactors is in most demand? Consistently, employee central payroll. We have done some statistics and looked across our database, and we've actually only got 32 ECP consultants that we would consider to be sort of strong in that space, and we consistently have roles in the ECP space. If you can cope with payroll, if you can cope with payroll, I would highly recommend going down that ECP space. One of my clients actually said to me that he is thinking of putting his daughter into the payroll space. He's a big wig in the SuccessFactors place, runs a practice, and he wants to get his daughter to do it because he knows for a fact that ECP will never be taken over by AI.
I think it's also like when you have a niche like ECP, because there's not that many people doing it, it becomes very high value. There's also a lot of market demand for it as well.
Yeah, good
like
there as well.
EC recruitment and onboarding is still going to be the core. You're still going to see that, performance and goals, LMS, they'll obviously still have their place, and they'll still have a lot of projects where they're doing uplift. And especially from an SAP perspective, you would have seen the newest, what is it? The rollout that's happening. I think it's this from SAP standpoint where they do the upgrades. But in general, ECP is still going to be the core. ECP is going to be the one that has the most demand. And that's where we see the majority of our clients kind of asking us for roles as well. KG, you mentioned, what is the scope for sales and distribution at the moment? S4HANA like in 2026? Are there any roles in the market?
Yes, I'm working on an S4HANA SD role at the moment. So KG, if you want to contact me after this, it's a contract role. But yeah, it's definitely something we're seeing.
Yeah.
In.
I think traditionally, as I probably mentioned before, there's not much manufacturing in Australia, right? You don't typically see much manufacturing. So there is sort of sales and distribution roles for S4 projects, and you typically see them in sort of bottling companies, or if you're in steel or those types of industries with some sort of manufacturing in, like, let's say machinery and things like that. But there also isn't that much in Australia. But SD still has its place, and there are still S4 projects that need it. But it also, a lot of the time, consultancies will be able to provide a resource for those resources themselves. Indeed. And Greg, yeah, exactly, you're right. Business supply chains more aligned to sort of the big four consulting firms or the old school of thinking. But even then, even when we're working with consulting teams, we don't have that.
Catherine Castro, must-haves for SAP FICO, please, in CV. Project experience, end-to-end project experience, S4HANA experience, some of the latest and greatest technologies. That will really sort of put you aside. But if you've got your PR visa ready for migration, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It can be very challenging to find a role from overseas. If it's an option, I would suggest coming over and searching for roles whilst on the ground. It can be very challenging to find roles from overseas.
And then Moen, are there any SAP DataSphere BDC implementations currently kicking off in Australia? Yeah, there are. There's quite a few in Brisbane, actually. The same with Melbourne also. And I think they're kind of you're seeing a lot in government. Government is investing a significant amount in that space to ensure that they're kind of with the latest and greatest for a lot of it. And that's probably another point to mention to kind of the whole session here. Government is making a big comeback in terms of how they're going to actually go ahead with their SAP projects. So you probably know, sometimes the government, there's a lot of red tape, there's a lot of challenges, there's a lot of approvals that happen. Once those approvals are done, they'll be the big fish in terms of projects, like federal government, local government. We're working with a lot of governments at the moment across Brisbane, Melbourne, Sydney, and Perth to really kind of get those developments underway.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, pleasure. Swathi, what is the current situation for SAP Technical Core ABAP consultant with first job in Australian market? A big portion of ABAP roles that come open in Australia are on large government projects that usually require you to have an Australian citizenship or to be able to be cleared, MV1 or baseline. It can be quite challenging to find an ABAP role. My recommendation would be try and go for some of the smaller organisations that use ABAP and try and get in that way. Again, flexibility is the key here, but ABAP is probably one of the biggest areas that we see people migrating into Australia. And I don't think that there's been sort of any studies done in regards to the talent that we need in Australia for particular roles. So it can be challenging. Not saying it can't be done, but it can be challenging. This goes on nicely to Antsy. Is that how I pronounce it? Sorry. Is there any opening for ABAP development? Is there any scope here? Yes, there is. Again, preference goes to Australian citizens, people who are able to do clearance. But yeah, it's not a massive space that we recruit in consistently.
We'll take 2 more questions, guys, and then we'll wrap up so you guys can all get back to the rest of your days. But the first one here is, who's the best person to contact at Precision for program senior PM roles? Again, we've got 8 recruiters within the SAP team, so you can reach out to any of us.
Together.
We all work together.
Yeah.
We're not all siloed. So if you have any specific questions or you want to talk about roles, feel free to message either I or Abby, and we can definitely put you in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. Best person to contact at Precision for entry or junior level openings. We often don't get entry or junior level openings, just for full transparency, and that's mostly because clients will come to us to find the senior roles and can often find entry and junior consultants themselves. We often recommend that consulting is a good space to start if you're looking for entry level roles. They do a lot of recruitment drives in regards to graduates. However, when it comes to recruiters, we often recruit for more of the senior roles. However, please drop Seb or I an email afterwards, and we'll see what we can do. See if anything comes up.
Awesome. Well, that pretty much concludes it, everyone. Thank you very much for tuning in and having obviously really good questions and obviously for your time as well. If you have any other questions or if there's anything specific that you really want to chat to us about, then as Abby mentioned, just give us a message and hopefully we can answer them then.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks, everyone.